They say when something feels off, it usually is. My gut doesn't do poetry, but it sure does math. And around 6 months ago, the numbers weren't adding up. My wife, Ellen, runs the Northeast region for one of the largest insurance companies in the country. She's the kind of woman who can negotiate a $10 million claim over crab cakes and still remember your mother's birthday. Classy, precise, and in control, especially of her image. She'd been traveling more than usual, conferences in places like Charlotte, Louisville, sometimes even Seattle, where apparently the insurance scene is so vibrant it demands candlelit dinners and zero phone reception. Now, I'm not the jealous type. I'm a lawyer, which means I believe in facts, documents, and the magic of subpoena power. But you also don't spend 3 decades in litigation without developing a sixth sense for when someone's bluffing. So when Ellen told me she'd be missing our daughter's baby shower because of an urgent 2-day conference in Charlotte, I smiled, said, of course, and quietly flagged it in my mental folder labeled red flags and fancy lingerie. Our daughter, Stephanie, is pregnant with her first. Emotional, hormonal, and still convinced her mother walks on water. She'd asked me to help with the cake table, which I did. I also helped with something else, booking a private investigator and a discreet subpoena server with military-grade punctuality. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The night before Ellen's conference, we had a video call with Stephanie and her husband Dylan. He's a good man, ex-military. Doesn't say much, but when he does, you listen. Ellen wore her business armor, a beige blazer over something silky, hair pulled into that CEO ponytail that says, "I'll own your company and still make it home for dinner." She played the doting mother. "I wish I could be there, sweetheart. I'll make it up to you." I just smiled, nodded, and added, "Charlotte in April, huh? Hope they've still got that lobster risotto at the White Orchid." Ellen froze for a fraction of a second. Not enough to raise a jury's eyebrows, but enough for me to mark Exhibit A. She ended the call early, citing a packing emergency. 5 minutes later, I watched her through the half-closed bedroom door. Lace lingerie I hadn't seen in years, heels taller than our ethics, and no sign of the usual sleepwear. She wasn't packing for Charlotte. She was dressing for a verdict. So I called Stephanie, told her if she wanted the truth, she needed to come with me to North Carolina. She hesitated. Loyalty is a tricky thing when you still remember your mother brushing your hair before school. But Dylan gave her that look, the one he probably gave rookie soldiers who didn't want to follow orders, and she agreed. Next night, we landed quietly in Charlotte, checked into a hotel 2 blocks from hers, and waited. The restaurant was called Juniper and Bone, one of those dim-lit, artisanal places where the water costs more than your dignity. I wore a casual jacket and ordered a whiskey neat. Stephanie wore a hoodie stretched over her belly and a look that could strip paint off the walls. At exactly 7:40 p.m., Ellen walked in, not alone, not with a colleague, but with a man who looked like he sold expensive watches for fun and probably smelled like imported regret, Tom Randall. I'd done my homework. Partner agency rep, married, no kids, good teeth. And apparently a thing for women who conference twice a quarter. Ellen sat across from him like they'd done this 100 times, because they had. Her smile was effortless. His hand brushed hers, and she didn't pull away. The way they toasted, quiet, secretive, almost reverent, it was the kind of clink you hear when something shatters. That's when Stephanie stood up. "Enjoying dinner, Mom?" she said, loud enough for nearby tables to pause mid-bite. "How's the risotto from room 412? Ellen's face drained faster than our savings during college tuition season. Tom coughed, nearly choking on his wine. I walked over and placed a manila envelope on the table. "Miss Slade, you've been served. Mr. Randall, you too." It wasn't dramatic. Just quiet, clean, and final. Inside were printed transcripts, hotel records, surveillance photos, everything down to the receipt. From the boutique, where Ellen bought the black lingerie labeled, "For the nights I don't call home." Tom opened his copy like he was checking a menu, then muttered something about needing air and practically sprinted out. Stephanie didn't cry. She just looked at her mother and said, "You were supposed to be there when I picked the name." Ellen reached out, but Stephanie stepped back. "Oh," I added. There's one more. I handed her the second envelope. This one's from Tom's wife. Lawsuit for alienation of affection. North Carolina still honors those. Click. A nearby waiter had pulled out his phone. I didn't stop him. Let the world watch. Let them see how corporate loyalty and marital betrayal looked under dim designer lighting. Later that night, back in our own hotel, Stephanie lay on the bed eating room service onion rings with chocolate ice cream. Dylan sat beside her, calm as ever, rubbing her back. I poured myself a second drink and texted our family attorney. Begin divorce prep, make it clean, no drama, and get the house keys changed before Sunday. Coming home after dropping a truth bomb isn't as satisfying as it looks in the movies. There's no epic soundtrack, no slow-motion walk down the jetway, just a quiet Uber ride, a key that doesn't quite fit the lock anymore, and a house that suddenly feels like a well-decorated museum of bad decisions. Ellen flew back to Hartford 3 days after Charlotte. She didn't call, didn't text, probably hoped I'd cool off or forget the part where she turned our marriage into a punchline at a conference. I didn't scream when she walked through the front door, didn't throw a lamp or dramatically shred her clothes like some kind of soap opera widower. I just sat at the kitchen island drinking coffee from my #1 dad, DNA-verified mug, a custom order I made the day after I got the paternity results back. Ellen's heels clicked across the hardwood like nothing had happened. "You changed the locks?" she asked, setting down her bag like she still had a place here. "Mm-hmm," I said without looking up. "New locks, new alarm code, and the guest. Room's all yours," she blinked. "You're serious?" As a tax audit. I slid the guest room key across the counter. "Your stuff's in there, minus the things you wore in Charlotte. Those are in the trash." Ellen didn't touch the key. She just stared at me like she was waiting for the old Marcus to show up, the one who folded her sweaters and remembered her tea preferences. But he'd left with the locksmith. I got up, grabbed a beer from the fridge, then paused. "You want one?" She nodded, slowly. "Yeah, sure." I tossed her a bottle and watched her fumble it. She used to catch better, back when we were still a team. She cracked it open, leaned against the counter and said, "I don't know what you want me to say." "That's convenient," I said, "because I know exactly what I want to say." I pulled out a small envelope and dropped it next to her beer. Inside were 3 printed lab reports. DNA tests. I'd tested all 3 of our kids. Not because I suspected, but because I needed closure. Because once trust breaks, paranoia creeps in like mildew. "They're mine," I said. "All 3. So thank you. For that." Ellen's eyes glossed, but she blinked it away. Always the executive. Cry later, if at all. "Marcus, it wasn't about you. It never was." "Of course it was," I said with a laugh that had no humor in it. "You think I married you for your souffle recipes? I chose you because you were brilliant, driven, terrifying in boardrooms, and somehow you chose me back. Now you're out here playing hotel roulette with a man who thinks charcuterie is a love language." I made a mistake. "No, Ellen, a mistake is forgetting to sign a birthday card. You booked the same hotel every quarter. You wore that gold ankle bracelet I bought for our anniversary to his room. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Silence. I walked to the living room and turned on the back patio lights. The pool glowed blue in the darkness, and standing near it, in one of Ellen's silk robes, dripping wet and holding a glass of rosé, was Rachel. Yes, that Rachel. Ellen's college bestie. Our kids called her Auntie Rach. She'd been crashing here since the fallout. Said she needed a break from her apartment. What I didn't tell Ellen was that Rachel had known about the affair. Not just known, warned her. More than once. Rachel looked over and raised her glass, like this was just another Tuesday. "Seriously?" Ellen said behind me. "Relax," I said. "We're not sleeping together. She just needed a place to stay after quitting her job, and I needed someone to talk to who didn't lie to my face. She's in my robe. She's also in your size, which saved me a trip to Target." Ellen stormed off to the guest room. I followed, leaned against the doorframe and said, "I'm not gonna scream. I'm not gonna cheat. I'm not even gonna badmouth you to the kids, but I am gonna divorce you, efficiently, with dignity, and maybe a little flair." Her voice cracked. "What flair?" "I'm keeping the house. You get the condo in Stamford. The firm stays in my name. but I'll give you equity in the trust, and I'll tell the kids the truth. Calmly. Factually. Like a lawyer. I was lonely, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. I wanted attention. You had attention, I said. You just wanted applause. That shut her up. I left her there, robeless and excuseless, and went out back to sit with Rachel. She handed me her glass. She still thinks you'll forgive her, Rachel said. I sipped the wine. Yeah, that's her favorite fairy tale. She also thinks I'm in love with you. I laughed. Are you? Rachel shrugged. I mean, you have great patio furniture. We sat in silence a while longer. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that's earned after 3 decades of marriage, betrayal, and watching someone you once loved self-destruct in designer heels. The next morning, I made pancakes. Not because I was feeling generous, but because it was Wednesday and routine is how I stay sane. Rachel helped. Ellen stayed in the guest room. Stephanie called later and said she was skipping the baby shower in Connecticut. Said she didn't want her daughter celebrated in a house where lies were baked into the walls. Can't say I blamed her. Ellen tried to talk to me that evening, sat on the edge of the sofa while I watched a rerun of The Office, said we could try therapy. I told her I already had a therapist. Her name was Rachel. She charged nothing and made better margaritas. She didn't laugh. I didn't care. That night, as I locked up, I noticed something. Ellen's wedding ring wasn't on her hand, not on the nightstand, not in the guest room. She'd put it back in the original box, the little red velvet one, and left it on the kitchen counter beside the coffee pot. Smart move. I brewed myself a fresh cup and dropped the box into the drawer, beside the tax returns and old takeout menus. Then I sat down and started drafting the formal divorce proposal. Bullet points, timelines, asset breakdowns, all neat, all fair, all business, because that's what we were now. 2 people managing the aftermath of a failed merger. No screaming, no tears, just silence, and the soft click of a pen signing the end of something that once felt unbreakable. Divorce is like a chess match, but with lawyers instead of pawns and court fees instead of trophies. You don't win. You just survive with your king still standing. Ellen hired a firm from Stamford with an all-female litigation team. Their website had glossy photos, testimonials from celebrities, and a slogan that said, "We defend your legacy." I guess when you torch your legacy, you need professionals to sift through the ashes. My attorney was Raymond Brock, 63 years old, a former Marine, and allergic to bullshit. The man once argued a child custody case during a hurricane, and didn't flinch when the roof started to leak. "Let her come at you," he said, filing papers like he was folding origami. "The more she swings, the easier she is to beat." The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no shouting, no teary-eyed confessions, just paperwork, exhibits, and a lot of uncomfortable glances between Ellen and her lawyers every time my side dropped another bomb. We had surveillance footage from 3 different hotels over 6 years, dozens of dinners with Tom Randall, including one Valentine's Day when she claimed she was helping with flood claims in Raleigh. We had receipts, text logs, and one painfully cheesy voicemail where Tom said he'd booked the Tuscany suite because it matched her perfume. The judge didn't smile once, just flipped through the folders like he was reading lunch menus. Ellen's team tried the emotional angle, claimed the relationship with Tom was deeply emotional but never physical. That fell apart faster than Tom's reputation, because, oh yes, Laura had entered the building. Tom's wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, had her own team of attorneys and they were hungry. Turns out North Carolina still allows lawsuits for alienation of affection, and Laura's attorneys smelled blood. She filed a suit not just against Tom, but against Ellen directly for knowingly participating in the destruction of a legal marriage. It was the kind of headline that prints itself. Insurance exec sued for wrecking family. Lover's wife demands 7 figures. The courtroom wasn't the only battlefield. Laura's attorney, a social media savvy type named Kendra Bright, launched a podcast the same week titled The Other Woman Inside the Affair. The first episode opened with audio of Tom's voicemail. The second featured a woman crying while describing the moment she found hotel receipts in her husband's glove box. By episode 3, the other woman had gone viral. It hit #2 on Apple Podcasts, right between a celebrity true crime show and a podcast about murder-solving golden retrievers. Meanwhile, Ellen tried to hold on to her job. Her company issued a bland statement. "We do not comment on personal matters involving our employees." But when the podcast hit 1 million streams and a few too many clients started referencing it during meetings, they changed their tune. She wasn't fired exactly. She was reassigned. Her office was moved out of the executive wing and into what used to be the storage room near the HR printer. Back home, Stephanie stayed quiet. Too quiet. She texted me photos of the nursery. She was setting up in Savannah. Pale green walls, a mobile with wooden stars, a bookshelf already stacked with picture books. When I called, she answered, but her voice was cool. "I'm naming her Lily," she said. "Mom doesn't know." "Got it," I said. "And the shower? We're doing it here, in Georgia. No flights? No surprises?" She paused. I don't want my daughter growing up thinking it's okay to lie, or cheat, or hurt someone who loves you and still get balloons afterward. Fair. I offered to fly down, but she said, "Let's wait until after she's born. Let things settle." Translation: "Let Mom fade from the picture a little more first. As for Tom, well, karma is punctual." After the lawsuit hit, his father, the owner of the agency, cut him off. Not just from the business, but from the family estate. Something about bringing shame to the Randall name, which I guess was sacred in certain yacht clubs. Tom moved into a condo near the airport. No Laura, no money, no Tuscany suites. At the firm, my partners voted unanimously to keep my name on the wall and Ellen's stake frozen. She technically kept her shares, but they're locked into a trust that pays out quarterly. Enough to keep her dressed, but not enough for Tuscany. Funny how that word stuck. One afternoon, I got a call from Kendra Bright, Laura's attorney/podcast queen. She wanted to do an episode featuring me. "America loves a calm man scorned," she said. "They expect rage. You give 'em sarcasm and pancakes." I declined, told her I'd rather fight my battles in court, not on Spotify. She respected that, even offered to send a signed mug from the show. I told her to send it to Rachel, speaking of Rachel. She was still at my place, floating somewhere between roommate and platonic moral support. We had a rhythm, coffee in the morning, silent judgment of reality TV at night. One evening, she asked me if I wanted her to move out. "Why?" I asked. "Afraid I'm starting to like you?" She rolled her eyes. "Afraid you're starting to confuse me with the idea of something safe, sharp, as always." Still, she stayed. One night I came home and found her on the back porch, writing something. I asked what it was. "A blog," she said, titled, "How to Tell the Truth Without Losing Friends." "You'll lose friends," I said. She smiled. "Maybe. But I'll sleep better." I nodded. Truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight so long, I forgot it was there until someone else picked it up and walked away. Ellen called once after the final ruling. Left a voicemail. No apology. Just, "I hope one day we can be in the same room without it being court-ordered." I deleted it. That was the last I heard from her for a while. The fallout had settled. The ashes were cooling. And for the first time in a long time, I was curious about what came next. Not bitter, just ready. 1 year after Ellen's last conference, I found myself wearing a linen shirt at a wedding by a lake in Vermont, holding hands with a woman who used to talk about me in the third person. Her name is Jen, sister of Rachel, soft-spoken, smart, with a sense of humor so dry it should come with a warning label. We met at my son's engagement dinner, the one Ellen wasn't invited to but showed up to anyway, with a man named Robert, who wore suspenders unironically, and introduced himself with a business card that read, "Robert Mason, attorney at law, gentleman by choice." She sat 2 seats down from me, sipping Chardonnay like it was a tactical weapon, and whispered, "Did he really hand you a card at your own kid's party?" I nearly spit my water. Rachel had warned me about her. Jen doesn't talk much, but when she does, it's sharp. She wasn't wrong. What started as small talk turned into long conversations, then weekend drives, then a mutual understanding that whatever this was, it wasn't a rebound. It was overdue. Jen had never been married. Came close once, but her fiancé got cold feet and ended up running an alpaca farm in Oregon. She's a school librarian, the kind who remembers birthdays, volunteers on weekends, and reads mystery novels like their training manuals. With her, everything felt easy. No games, no ego, no urgent business trips. She knew the whole story. Rachel didn't hide anything. In fact, the night Jen and I went on our second date, she asked me one question. Are you looking for someone to erase the past or help build something new? I said, new. She said, then stop checking your rearview mirror every 10 minutes. We laughed, but I listened. The wedding was small, just family and a few close friends. My daughter Stephanie stood beside me, holding Lily in a tiny white dress with matching shoes and a headband that made her look like she ran a baby startup. Dylan gave me a nod as I walked down the path. Solid guy. My son officiated. He opened with, marriage is a contract, but more importantly, it's a promise you choose to keep. And when it breaks, you don't look for a cleaner. You look for someone better to sign it with. Yeah, he gets his subtlety from me. Rachel gave a short toast, said something about witnessing the worst parts of love and still believing in the good parts. People clapped. What people didn't know, not yet, was that Rachel had turned her blog into a full-blown speaking tour. The title? The Friend Who Knew, subheading. How to stop being silent when the truth is burning your tongue. She wasn't subtle either. Ellen didn't come. She wasn't invited. Last time we spoke was at my son's rehearsal dinner. She pulled me aside near the coat check and said, "You really love her?" I said, "Yes." She nodded. "I tried with Robert. I did, but it's not the same." I didn't say anything. She looked at me, almost smiled, and said, "You used to hold my hand like that, you remember?" I took a sip of my drink. "Yeah, but I don't miss it." She blinked, like that stung more than the courtroom verdict. Then she said, "I didn't think you'd move on first." I answered, "That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't slow the betrayed down. It sets them free." She didn't have a comeback for that one. Now, standing by the lake with Jen, the wind in our hair, and a cake that had our initials carved into it like a bad prom carving, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not revenge, not vindication, just peace. After the ceremony, I walked over to Lily, who was trying to eat a flower. I picked her up, spun her around, and she giggled like only a kid who knows nothing of heartbreak can. Stephanie watched and smiled. "She likes you." "Of course." "She does?" I said. "She hasn't seen my tax returns." Later that evening, back at the rental house, Jen and I sat on the deck watching the sunset. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if Ellen hadn't cheated?" she asked. I thought about it, then shook my head. "No, because if she hadn't, I wouldn't have this. Wouldn't have you. Wouldn't have known I could lose everything and still find something better." She smiled. "Good answer, Mr. Lawyer." In the distance, someone played an old Sinatra song on the Bluetooth speaker. Rachel wandered onto the deck with her, drink and a smug grin. "You two look like a commercial for quiet revenge." Jen raised her glass. "Best kind there is." We laughed, and somewhere in the background a phone buzzed. Rachel glanced at it and smirked. "Podcast numbers are up again," she said. "Episode 12 just dropped. How to spot a lie in a room full of suits." I shook my head. "You're relentless." "You're welcome," she said, raising her glass. "To truth, and to finally saying it." We toasted, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man who lost a marriage. I felt like a man who built a new one, from scratch, with no secrets, no lies, and no room service receipts under fake names. Just honesty, laughter, and maybe a second slice of that cake with the initials. Because why not? Turns out, the second time around tastes a hell of a lot better when it's real.